Vita Wade, here we go, the host. Take it away.
Good morning. Good morning, Montserrat. Good morning to our visitors. Good morning to everybody who's here to celebrate St. Patrick's Festival. If you have been listening to the Blue Zone before, welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for staying connected to our stories to do with the ocean, our ocean economy, and how we can diversify into new ways of learning, earning, and living around the sea. And for those of you who are new, welcome, 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 welcome. And I'm so happy to have you here. So we are live on Facebook. We are also live on Radio ZJB, our community radio station here on Montserrat. And if you would like to call in, and you're overseas, you can call in on 1664, which is our area code. Remember that, 664. And if you are local, you continue that with 491-7227 or 491-9604. Or you can also WhatsApp us on 496-2885. So that's another way that you can join us with our conversation and stories today. And so let me start by saying that this week has been a challenging one. I had so many different things to do. One of them is I'm finishing a book, which I'm looking forward to sharing with you. It's called Loving the Sea and Questioning the System. It's going to be very interesting, short mini book. And then I got this terrible neck pain, which meant I could hardly get out of bed. And I've been thinking about what to talk about today and who to talk to. So I've been having several conversations. And one of them is with my dear friend and who I call our fisher mentor, Mr. Johnny Howes, Captain Johnny Howes. And he's with me here this morning. So I just like to say, welcome, Captain Johnny Howes. And thank you so much for taking the time for being with us here on the Blue Zone this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Vita, and thank you, George. It's a pleasure to be here to express myself and parlay some of my knowledge of the ocean and life around the ocean, on top of it, under it, and etc. So Vita is going to ask me some questions, and then I can elaborate on them more.
Right. So, it's going to be a conversation. It's going to be a discussion, Captain. And I'm trying to even get away from asking questions, but just going with the flow of what feels natural. And one of the things that felt natural to me today was to start by giving honor and respect to our forefathers, our freedom fighters, and those who over the years have supported them. And, we're celebrating St. Patrick's Day, as we all know, because 1768, we had our enslaved folks who were brought here as enslaved people from Africa. And they were brought in as workers on slave plantations, sugar plantations, and so forth. And we also had Irish folks here on the island before and during the plantation period. And up to a third of the sugar plantations were managed by those folks. And hence Montserrat's connection to our Irish heritage. Now, you might be wondering, how does this, connect back to the ocean and so on and so forth? And where I wanted to draw that connection is really around what it means to stand for freedom. And I think one of the things that are special to me about our ocean is that it's probably the next frontier for modern freedom for our people. But to get to that and its opportunity means that we need to work together in more collaboration, tighter collaboration, I believe, and also creating pathways for our international nonprofit organizations, scientific teams, technical officers, as well as parliamentarians to work with us in a more equitable way so that we can actually see generational progress. And, when you look back to that story, there was, the story goes that Kojo, who was the lead of one of these slave revolts, the biggest that we would have had in 1768, and that revolt didn't work out as planned. They planned to escape during the time that the Irish were celebrating St. Patrick's and drinking and partying and distracted. But the story got out and that was quelled, and Kojo was slaughtered and his head hung in Kojo Head in the Silk Cotton Tree. And if you drive around the Silk Cotton Tree during your stay here on Montserrat or while you're visiting, during the St. Patrick Festival, you would see a flame in that tree. And that's in the memory of the one Kojo, who in many ways, spirit still lives on in many of us, I would say. And I know whatever the lineage, that spirit to fight for freedom and to seek a better life for our people is one that many of us hold true and dear. Now, one of the things I want to say about, ocean conservation, ocean science, ocean innovation is that a lot of this has to do with finance, access to finance, long and short, across the globe, north to south. Who makes it, who doesn't, what actually blossoms and cross-pollinates is all down to capital. And sometimes, really and truly, the capital is not there. There are challenges. A lot of the money is to do with the ocean space, is going to oil and gas and other spaces, not necessarily to us on the ground who are doing the level work of holding the line. And this is possible for us to be here, to be representing, to be telling our stories through allyship. Some people may describe this as support, help, solidarity. I would like to describe it as activation. And when I say activation in this space, it's a case of sometimes you have money and people can give you cash and to support your projects and your programs and your development needs as a country. But sometimes before that even arrives, you may need a different type of support, and that comes through activation. And when I say activation, I mean in-kind support. I mean that type of long-term responsibility and commitment it takes to motivate, to inspire, to keep encouraged, to mentor, to give knowledge and expertise, to give time. And this is where Captain Johnny comes in for me, because many people may not know that even before Fish and Fins was Fish and Fins, and before Vita Wade knew anything to do with what she was doing in the sea, besides strapping her 2-year-old child on her back and running up and down from beach to beach with fishermen, and also with friends like Oslin Butler, Cindy, all kind of people who were here. Junie Irish's daughter, Cammy. These are some of the people that were originally here for Fish and Fins, and Captain was here too. So Captain gave his time. Captain taught me a lot to do with fish species, the practice of fishing, the methods of fishing. He was always generous with his time, generous with his knowledge. He was able to sometimes activation, and that type of collaboration comes with sharing risks, right? And he has been there through thick and thin. And I would just like to say, Captain, thank you for staying the course, because if it wasn't for people like you, I may not be sitting here today. And maybe Fish and Fins wouldn't have had the lasting impact it has had on a barefoot budget. So with that, I'm honored to sit next to you. I'm honored to call you a mentor. I'm honored to call you a friend. And I am grateful for all you have offered us here on Montserrat in knowledge, in fisheries, in concern, in education awareness to do with our ocean. And I just want to start there. So thank you.
Thank you, Vita. I don't know where to start. I can start from the very start of my life. As a young boy, I lived at Woodlands Estate, and that was in the early 50s. And from the get-go, as a child, as soon as I learned to walk, our family had a tilapia pond It was built by my grandfather in the early 1900s. And two other places on Montserrat had tilapia, and that was Farrell's, and later in the early 50s, the late 50s, it was Frank DeLille at Alveston had tilapia. And also the Hollanders had tilapia also. And so I started out catching tilapia and started also to fish in the rivers and streams for crayfish and mullet and so forth. And then on Saturdays, I would join up with some young boys from Sheep End and go down to catch moray eels down on between the rocks. And we would welcome the boats coming back from fishing. And for my whole life, as my father used to joke to friends, when he asked me at 5 years old, what do I want to do with my life? I said, I want to become a fisherman. And I have been fortunate to have stepped ahead. And when I left school, I did not graduate. When I left school, I was fortunate to have a friend who was the director of agriculture at the time, Mr. Rex Fredericks, and United Nations sent a vessel through the islands to get young fishermen to train them in the fishing activity, and that is commercial fishing, that is navigation, etc., and all types of fishing. And I went to Rex and I said, Rex, I want to go out on the boat. And he wrote me a letter and said, okay, go ahead, give it to them. And they took me out. They were impressed with me. And they met with my parents and said they should allow me to come to Barbados and Jamaica to learn to become a captain. And I went to Barbados and Jamaica. Went to UTEC, which is used called CAST back then. And so I did theory and practical. I fished from South America to Central America and throughout most of the Caribbean islands. I then, when I came back to Montserrat, I got in with a friend who had the capability to build boats, and that was Johnny Harris, Taxi Johnny. And we built several vessels, and I used to skipper them to Antigua and St. Kitts Nevis fishing. And then in 75, I migrated to Canada, and I spent 10 years in the Canadian Coast Guard and worked around the ocean most of my life. Now I've come back, I've retired and come back to Montserrat, and I have a wealth of knowledge that a lot of the younger Montserratians, when I say younger, they are less than my age, but they have went through the disasters that Montserrat had. In 89, we had Hurricane Hugo, and in 74, actually, the year before I left, we had one of the strongest earthquakes that hit Montserrat at that time in over 60 years. And that was 7.6 on the Richter scale. Now, I used to do commercial diving and spearfishing, and I personally witnessed in the aftershocks the cliffs and the caves and so forth collapsing from the earthquakes.
Is that cliffs and caves in the sea?
Yes, in the reefs. And then after that, we then got the Hurricane Hugo that decimated all of the turtle grass beds where the conchs and turtles used to feed and the conchs used to reside. Because I was a conch diver, and I am not ashamed of it. It was a job I had. I used to be a turtle hunter in the early late 60s and early 70s. So after 75, when I migrated to Canada and spent many years up there, I decided I had enough of the cold, and I came back home to parlay and give my knowledge I have However, I have not been able to do that on an extent that I would like. That is why when I saw Vita and she told me her aim, her goal, I was delighted that I could pass on some of my information to her to steer her in do's and don'ts around the ocean, the safety at sea, and the fact that we have species of fish that habitate along the coast. But we have suffered a major disaster in the ocean from the volcano. As we know, 2/3 of Montserrat Island is uninhabitable. However, what happened now is that in the ocean, more than 2/3 of the ocean has been decimated by the runoff, lahars, and so forth from the volcano and the ash, etc., and buried more than 2/3 of our reefs. And the volcanic ash is so fine that up to today we have any turbidity. Turbidity means rough water or even runoff from a rainstorm. The water around Montserrat is white, as we say, white. You cannot see your hand in front of your face at times. Now,
Okay, can I just pause you right there 1 second? Because I love a good timeline. And I feel like we want to bring people back to your timeline because you've mentioned a few things here already. One, you grew up here on Montserrat. Am I understanding that right? So at 5 years old, you're telling your dad you wanted to be a fisher.
Yeah.
So you grew up here. You were immediately engaged in fishing, in the fishing sector, in the ocean space, recreationally otherwise. You experienced Hurricane Hugo here then?
No, I happened to be in Canada at the time. And also the onset of the volcano. What happened is that I was a frequent flyer to Montserrat because the jobs I had, but the main job I had in the Canadian Coast Guard allowed me to travel every 2 or 3 months back to Montserrat. So I was in the context of Montserrat, plus in the later times when Radio Montserrat went online, I always had Radio Montserrat playing in my house 24/7.
So when did you leave Montserrat and then return back?
I left
What was
Montserrat
that year?
in January 25th, 1975. And after 3 years, I returned for the first time. And then subsequently after that, I was coming back every 2 to 3 months for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time.
And then did you actually leave for an extended period of time?
Yeah,
And
well,
then come back? Was it after the volcano?
after the volcano and not having some place to stay, I would come down and rent or pay to stay in a bed and breakfast or something like that for 2 weeks at a time. But it became expensive. But after the volcano got quiet in 2011, I came back for good.
Okay, so you and I came back around the same time for good. You see, this is something I'm learning, even though I've known you for a while, and I didn't know that. But what's interesting now is that you are able to tell us a picture of, you went into talking about
2012.
2012. Okay, I came back in 2011, September. My son was born in 2012. But yeah, so you're able to tell us a story and paint a picture of what the ocean was like, how your people were earning, what the fishery was looking like, what the environment and the coastlines were looking like, and what that practice of earning from the ocean and exploring the ocean as a community was looking like pre-volcano. Because as you mentioned, our catastrophic losses happened during and as a result of the 1997 eruptions. But before that, you had a vast experience.
Yes.
And I want you to tell us, in your eyes, what was it looking like? Where were you spending most of your time? What was that coastline looking like? What was the snorkeling and diving looking like? You talked about, hunting turtles. What were the numbers looking like? What was the vibes around the ocean? Can you paint that picture for us?
Well, that is actually the key point that I would like to present here today. The fact that in the late 60s, early 70s, the water clarity was such that you could see 95 feet in any direction, crystal clear as if you're just walking down the street. The next thing is that we had many more fishing boats and fishing communities. So we had boats from we had one or two boats at Ogaros or St. Patrick's area. We had about 8 boats in Plymouth. Then we had at least 5 or 6 boats at Isles Bay, Old Road Bay. And then we had 4 or 5, 6 boats at Cars Bay. Cars Bay was a fishing village also back in my day. And when people talk about a couple weeks ago, we caught a bunch of jacks. Well, we used to catch jacks several times a year in boatloads. Granted, then we had a very large population. When I say very large in comparison to today, we had 10 to 12,000 people, and the fish could be sold easily. What happened now is that the fishers would have sufficient fish around Montserrat, and also vessels used to venture to around Redonda to catch gar, etc. And so the fish was no problem in Montserrat in my day growing up. Now diving, I had a team of divers, and we would systematically dive around Montserrat. Now with the event of the earthquake in 74, and the event of the Hurricane Hugo in 89, and then the event of the onset of volcanic activity, many of the population of Montserrat, as we all know, have left Montserrat to go elsewhere. A lot of the population of boats, they were left behind and deteriorated to be no good, because a lot of them were wood in those days. And then what happened now is that with the lack of population and the disaster of the volcano and displacement of the population, most of our fishers went to England and to neighboring islands. So we lost a big portion of our fishers. Now the young fishers are coming up. I have kept harassing the fisheries officer and the powers that be that we should get new young about to leave school or school leavers to go away to study to be proper commercial fishermen. Montserrat has a major handicap, and we do not have a safe harbor. And it's called open roadstead. So what happened now is that any kind of rough seas or winds and the depth of our water, what happened now is that over the years we have lost boats going adrift, breaking their mooring and going adrift, or being thrown ashore and damaged. And the quantity, as you said, about financial support, a lot of the fishers are artisanal fishers. So what happened now is that if they don't have, and many of them are doing construction work during the week, so they only fish on weekends, and or they have a job working at the port or working with government. So they only are able to fish on weekends and so forth. So we need to have proper full-time fishermen. There's only about 4 full-time fishermen. That's all they do for a living. And they are getting up in age, and we need to start training our younger generation to retain them, because when they graduate from school, they say there's no work. And although they might like fishing, they see the handicap of having to buy a boat and the equipment, and then the possibility of losing it. So it is hard for a younger generation to then go now and try and put out money and not having the training to know that they can diverse their fishing and do other types of fishing. So technology needs to be parlayed to the younger generation so they know that it's not just going and putting a line overboard or pulling a fish pot up, but there are other forms of fishing that can be very beneficial and financially gaining to them. What do you say?
I'm happy you're mentioning that. I'm really happy you're mentioning that because I agree with you completely. We have to think about the future of fishing. We have to think about the future of not just the livelihood and the economic contribution that brings, because we also want to grow tourism, we want to grow population, and if we're going to do those things, we also need to make sure that we have a sustained and healthy fishing stock. But also you're mentioning the modernization of fisheries, which I think is also super important, is to get our young people to realize that fisheries has so many different components, right? So and that comes with amplifying the sector as well. So it doesn't look like just a job that older folks do. And we have to commend the young people as well, who are also going out, Chase Buffon and others like him, who are going out fishing, spearfishing, investing in equipment, tools, boats even. So that's happening. But at the same time, fisheries has so many things. Like some people don't even have to be in the water, right? You have those people who are shore fishers. Mm-hmm. You also have those people who may be involved in the cleaning of the fish,
yes.
the preparation and packaging of the fish.
Value added.
The value added. You also have the commercialization, the business side of this as well, because you're in fisheries if you're also costing this to put it in a supermarket, to liaise with the supermarket to get the stock in the right quantities and the right species. You may even be considering trading with neighboring islands and so on. And even before you even get into that, there's some young people who everybody's like really tech focused, data driven and things like this, who even my younger brother, Nish Brown, who is a bit of a tech genius. And when you think about data, one of the things that fisheries lacks across the region, especially across even the small and developing states of the world, is data, and Montserrat's situation is particularly challenging and unique too. So there are apps that could be designed. There are ways of understanding what the fishers do and how do we make them safer, how do we make it easier for them to collect data. And so these are some of the things that young people can be working and thinking about. There's also the aspect of boat building. You mentioned how people back then were some of the boats were wooden, and we had some good boat builders here, and that's still a craft that we shouldn't allow to die out. So when you talk about fisheries and the fisheries sector, there is those things as well that add on, that add value, that create wealth, and skills worth preserving and developing.
Well, I can say here that to go back to the effects of the volcano, yes, in yesteryear, before the volcano and so forth, we had 90% of our boats or 95% of our boats were wooden built, and we had shipwrights. It's called, the person who builds a boat is called a shipwright. And we had many shipwrights and so forth. But what happened is that because it's tedious work, a lot of the younger generation never picked up boat building. And now they're getting into building boats with plywood and fiberglass. But overall, the big picture that we suffer with in Montserrat is the fact that all our nearshore reefs have been buried. And I have been, for the past 12, 15 years, advocating for the revival of the artificial reef so that the reefs close to shore be restocked, because presently the nearshore reefs are being depleted, because Montserrat does not have any lagoons, estuaries, or so forth for juvenile fish, or mangrove habitat for juvenile fish to be in, to grow up protected until they get large enough to venture out into the deep sea. And I've been advocating for re-establishing the artificial reef at Isles Bay, Garibaldi Hill. And it's something that is needed for the future benefit of the total island. That is, not only the fishers making more money by catching more fish, but the local population. Presently, we import many millions of dollars of fish from overseas. And those fish could have been caught in Montserrat waters and utilized, whether it be value added by filleting them or cleaning them and selling them. And my phone rings at least once or twice a day, people looking to me to buy fish. Fresh fish, frozen fish, any kind of fish, they want fish. And so the market is there. However, we need the facilities for icing and processing the fish, but we also need the facilities for habitat for fish in our vicinity. The government several years ago started to introduce FAD, fish aggregating devices. However, these FADs are put in very deep water. Montserrat's water is extensively deep, not like Antigua or some of the neighboring islands. It's extensively deep, and the traffic that passes Montserrat en route from the South Islands to the North Islands, they pass close to our shores, and our FADs get lost. And especially in Montserrat, we get approximately 7 or more sand barges with tugs. And when they come close to Montserrat, it's easier to navigate along the shore. And these tugs go along and wipe out fish traps and fish aggregating devices en route to go back and forward to Plymouth or to Little Bay Roadstead.
Right. So you're talking a little bit here about the inshore pressures, right? So there is some inshore pressure. You've set the scene, the fact that we lost, a lot of our habitat for fish to breed, to feel safe, to grow their populations in the nearshore area. And one of the solutions that we have seen over the years is the placement of these fish aggregated devices, which is, I don't know if you explained what that was.
Fish aggregating devices, what happens is that you anchor a weight to the bottom, and the line coming up to the surface has on appendages that could be old trawl netting or plastic strapping or tarpaulin or coconut fronds. All kinds of things can be utilized. You see, historically and naturally, what happens is that the ocean is void of habitat in the ocean part of things. So the juvenile fishes that are migrating are preyed upon by the predators, which are things like tuna and dolphin and mahi-mahi, kingfish, wahoo, the marlins and so forth. So the fish needs some place to run to hide. Just like an animal on the savannah in Africa, they run to a tree, or they run under a tree or under a rock or whatever, and there's no place to hide. So the fisherman is strolling in the ocean, and he hopes that a passing mahi-mahi dolphin or a wahoo or tuna or something will bite his line. But if he knows where a FAD is anchored, he can troll around it, because those predatory fish are circling that FAD because the small fish are hiding in it. And they know sooner or later they have to come out to look food to eat, and they will eat them. So that is why fads have been around from since the 1800s in the South Pacific and Japan and so forth. And we introduced them to Montserrat. I built a fad when I came back from United Nations, and I had it off of the old airport at Blackburn. And it produced some tuna and wahoos. But what happened now is that a vessel, I don't know what vessel, whether it be, here I say, a drug boat or a fishing boat, chopped the buoy. I had the buoy filled with foam, and I found the buoy with several propeller chops in it. And that way now I knew that it was cut off by a vessel. I have put fads out off the airport, and the government of Montserrat has a restriction of 2 miles from shore. And I put it out one day about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and 3 days later, I went with a fisherman to put another fad at the opposite end of the airport. And this was at 5:30 in the afternoon. And I said to him, look, what is that coming down on the other end of the airport, coming down there? It was a tug and barge, 1.5 miles or less from shore, coming directly towards the fad that I had put out. And 3 days later, some divers were diving, and you call one of their names Chase Buffon and Shane, and they found my fad, because I put my name and phone number, etc., on it, down by Margarita Bay, by Pelican Rock. And so that shows you that we lose, to put a fad out costs many thousands of dollars. And to have a boat just come and cut it off, it's very, very expensive. And a fisherman who has no insurance, like if a vessel cuts off a fish pot, there is no recourse, because Montserrat water is so deep, they cannot dive and find the fish pot, because most people keep their fish pot in over 20, 30 fathoms. That is between 120 to 50 fathoms. That's 300 feet of water. You can't dive there. And the pot is lost, and the rope. Now, a simple major thing is the fact that all fish pot wire has to be imported into Montserrat. Granted, the fishermen get a tax reduction.
It's duty free, right? So they're 5%.
It's duty free, but you have to pay other fees. And the rope has to be imported, the floats have to be imported, and all that is. Then you have to, if you're not able to do it, you have to pay someone to build that fish pot. You have to pay somebody to cut the sticks, because I personally have tried going down in guts and so forth, cutting sticks, and I tell you, I'm not in that kind of shape of health to be pulling sticks out of down in valleys and so forth. And then you have to, there is one fish pot put in 20 fathoms of water. I worked it out, and it cost something like $5,000. It sounds ridiculous, but by the time you send money, you have to pay to send money to Antigua to buy the wire. You pay the person to take it to the shipper. You pay the shipper to do the invoice. When you come down to Montserrat, you still have to pay the handling fee by the agent. And then you pay a pickup truck if you don't have a vehicle to carry your wire. You pay the pickup truck to carry your wire and your rope and your floats to your home, or where you're going to have the fish pot built. Then you have to pay a man $200 to cut enough stick to do a roll of wire. And if you make 5 yards pot and so forth, you wind up with possibly 9 or 10 pots out of one roll of wire. So one fish pot placed out in the ocean, because you still have to pay a vehicle to take it down to the wharf, and then your fuel and time to take it out onto the bank, and then you put the pot there, and then 24 hours later, somebody loves the pot more than you, so it's stolen, or a vessel is passing and cut away your pot, it's gone. And that there's no insurance, there is no recourse, that is gone. You just write it off.
Well, you're talking about the real things here. I mean, you've touched on the potential successes of increasing fish stock, finding solutions around the losses in the inshore, the potential of the fads. You're bringing in larger fish stock, more pelagic fish, so you don't have to worry about fish poisoning and things like that. The mahi and all of those things tend not to have secretarial poisoning, but or that toxin, I should say. So you've touched on that. You've also touched on the challenges to do with fad fishery. You know, the marine traffic, and if, of course, Montserrat is looking to increase its marine traffic because we are looking to extend our port, we're looking to bring more numbers of people here, and that includes maritime vessels as well, shipping vessels, etc. We also have a sand mining sector, and the more movement of the sand barges and the tug also is a threat and a risk, which shows that we do need to really bump up our technology, because the only way you could really manage that is by mapping out where the boats are going through their GPS signals, and also being able to have a base tech which shows you where the fads may be placed, so you can avoid conflict, avoid that overlap, and you losing the fish pots. Now, for people who are still listening and want to call in to contribute, because I find this is very interesting where you're going with this. So 491-7227 or 491-9604, or you can WhatsApp us on 4962885. So we don't have much time, so it might even be a part 2 to this conversation. But what I wanted to take away as we're going through this is we're talking about the inshore reef. We lost inshore reef habitat, and we're looking at solutions for fisheries so that we can help to grow, activate, and modernize the sector so that people can make more money. We can have more healthy fish stock for our community and also for our visitors. And fads, the cost of fads, are you looking at tens of thousands?
No, it's you need at least 3 to 4, depending on the depth of the water. You need at least between 3 to 5 coils of rope, and each coil is approximately 1,200 feet long.
Because you're saying fishing pot is about 5,000 per pot. So how much is a fad?
A fad is basically, there is, how should I say this, less labor. And once you place a fad, you cannot move it again because it's anchored with a big cement block or engine or something on the bottom. So what happened now is that the fad, the floats are expensive. The floats can cost several $100s. I personally pick up on the eastern side of the island a lot of buoys that can be utilized for fads. These buoys, buying them from the one of the stores that sell these kind of things, can cost anywhere from $40 to $90 a piece. But I have located or salvaged, beachcombing a lot of these floats that can be utilized to build fads. However, the ropes cost a lot of money. The appendages, it's like, what do you call it? They know, floating net and so forth that washes up on the beach. Because you see these trawlers in South America and in America and so forth, when they trawl snags on the bottom, you get the net ripped, and a lot of the net gets thrown out to drift.
Okay, so JGP has just highlighted that number to call in is 496-906-FLOOR. So please do call in if
That's
you want to
WhatsApp.
say hi to Captain Johnny or you want to contribute to this conversation. Please feel free. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. We don't bite. So Captain Johnny, you are talking about the fats. I'm going to take us a little bit back closer to shore because we highlighted the situation with fads, and I'm seeing that fads cost some money, could even be up to 5,000 or more. We have a call coming in. So caller, good day, good morning.
Vita, good day, good morning.
Morning. How are you?
Not too bad. Captain Johnny, good day, good morning.
Good morning, sir. I recognize the voice.
Yes. Well, the kind of program might let 1, 2, or 3. You got a program here about 11, 12, 13. Continuous.
You're breaking up occasionally, dear. You always seem to do that. You seem to be always talking when you're outside and away from.
Come, let me inside a try to get after me recognize them in a guitar and me
Yeah.
come outside. So let me try this back.
No, I'm hearing you good now.
Yes. So me may tell Vita that the program is on follow up about 10 more time. not one 2 or 1 3. Right?
Yeah.
Because listen here now. Johnny said that can't be one fishing area, but also Little Bay. A fishing area too, right? The port,
Yes,
right?
yes,
The
yes,
Moses
yes,
Bay.
yes.
Right. And Vita would believe right now Western Union is they want shipyard.
Used to build vessels there.
Exactly. Right
Yeah.
now Western Union yard. Vita.
Mm.
Right.
I didn't know that. So thank you for sharing that.
Exactly. And then you're a young fisherman too.
What?
But yeah, and me used to around the boat building, me used to around everything that Captain Johnny they'll talk about around the ocean. But the point about it, this is how me say you're gonna need some follow up. Me not gonna touch them now. But you don't have to get some young people who first you don't have to be them for love what them do. Because as Captain Johnny they explain you still got a lot of disappointment and a lot of discouragement in the too.
Yes.
Because sometimes you can buy one whole tank of gas, 2 tank of gas, 3 tank of gas, and you go out. Sometimes you come in not even one fish. Sometimes we one. Sometimes just only to cook. All that they can discourage you too. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
And
And especially if the current is strong or the weather is bad or
exactly.
the fish are not biting, etc.
Exactly. And, well, me used to go out early in the morning with Fred and my father and, Jacqueline and them and, sometime, boy, when the water, hit in your face early morning.
And
like it could be, and,
I'll pick up
one
there
time-
to you and tell you one of the reasons why you're getting the water in your face is because you're out on an open boat, artisanal
Exactly.
fishing. Whereas in modern day, if Montserrat had safe harbor, you would have a boat that had a cabin that you could be out of the elements while you're traversing from point A to point B, and even day-to-day fishing.
Yeah. And one time me out there, nobody laugh after, but me I forgive this experience. So it's
Go
my
ahead.
yellow hole.
Mm.
We have my yellow hole. And I mean my father and Fred. And the rope get tied up. So maybe I have to jump over for clear the rope now after some stones and so that they could get the pot pull up properly. So when they said jump over, the first thing flying at me head a shark and all kind of something under there.
Yeah.
Then, after now, I'm not sure now, It's full of barnacle.
Yes.
But, then go tell me clean the band off the rope. And the biggest mistake me ever make. By the time he start to pull the barnacle off of the boat, vomiting start.
So that turned you off from fishing?
No more than that. I just want to tell Vita, you got about over 10, 20 programs like this.
Yeah. Well,
and this time let me go.
it's up to Vita
Well.
to
Yes,
decide
the
how she
cherry.
wants to mold her programs.
Yes. And the cherry returned back the same, about basically the same time, so we got something in common right there.
Yeah.
Well,
Return back to Munshot. Yeah, when we hear the... Go ahead.
I know. I'm just saying that I'm being signaled that we're gonna have to wrap up in 5 minutes. But
Yes.
I'm so happy you called in, and we will be back. I'm doing this program every other week, so not next Monday, but the Monday after, we'll be doing the program again. I'm hoping Captain Johnny will come back because
Yeah.
we have more to talk about. That we didn't even get to speak about the artificial reef situation, and he has some ideas around artificial reefs that may merge what we currently see and do compared and bring in fads as well. So that's an interesting conversation. And I'm happy you mentioned some of those elders in the fishing scene like Fred and Uncle Deep.
Yes.
Because my son's
Deep,
grandfather is George Allen, and George Allen might be listening today as well. So good morning,
Yes.
Grandpa Allen and Deep, who he was always saying to me to come out and I'll give you a joke. I said to him I wanted to go see the whales. This is years ago, and he called me one morning 4:30 and said, "Vita, meet me down a bay." 4:30 in the morning, that's the sweetest sleep, sweetest time. I told him my bed, I said, "Listen, about 5 o'clock I called Deep. I said, Deep, I can't come, boy, I can't come. I'm too tired. And then it was so funny. So I had to give up on that. And then when our dear friend John Lee disappeared, at sea, I have to tell you that it really shook my nerve. So Deep still says to me, I have to get past that and just come out anyway. And so I'm going to try to build my courage again and go out with him. You want to come? Call you when we come in? We going?
No. Let me tell you what we're gonna do. There we got a couple more programs. Get some people more interested because at the same time, I'm sure Captain Johnny would like to talk about rhythm and support and so on. All them places that we don't travel. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And support and so on.
Okay, that's a deal.
So
That's a deal.
yes.
Okay.
And then I'll get to the real money making and the losses.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for calling in. And if anybody else wanted to call in but didn't, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. The number again is 496 9067. So write that down for the next time. And Captain Johnny, it's been fantastic. We are going to have to wrap up. I don't know if you have any final thoughts. Please share it with everybody.
Well, you touched on it just now. The fact that I have been interested in revitalizing the artificial reef at Isles Bay, Garibaldi. And I have designed an artificial reef that is 100% it does not deteriorate in the ocean. Short of a yacht or boat dropping its anchor on top of it, it can be around for over 50 years. And I see George is eyeing us up to
Yes.
leave. So what I would say is thank you, Vita, for having me. And I hope I express myself in a way that the general public listening can understand. And I've offered my services to the powers that be to teach and to instruct the younger generation coming up, because the fishery of Montserrat needs the younger fishers to come. And thank you very much again, Vita.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you to our followers. And I'll just leave by saying that I'm honored again. Thank you for joining me, joining us here on the Blue Zone. And a reminder to everybody, get to know people, understand who they are. Let's try and go a little bit further than surface level and get to a deeper understanding so that we can really map out what the future of the ocean and what the ocean means to monstrations will be for our next generation. So thank you again, and until next time, bye-bye.